What is it?
The main thing I got from it was like this sense of feeling seen and validated.
Well, why does it have to be this way?
This book was placed in my hand for this moment.
Insightful, learned a lot, wrote some quotes that I'm ready to like paint on my wall.
I love this book!
That we just kind of pull out some of the big themes that we see and talk about a few different ones.
I apologize if most of my contribution has K-pop references.
Alternative book title, The Feminine Mystique Part 2. You were really just gay all along. Welcome to Book Club.
With Julia.
And Victoria.
Those undergrads who came back from studying abroad, so excited to show off their haul of books from Shakespeare & Co.
Yeah, my partner's family is going to Paris, and I had to bite my tongue like 4 times to not be like, you should go to Shakespeare & Co. I'm like, that's so annoying. Don't say that. But anyways, we'd like to be your book friends, and this is a podcast about books we just can't shut up about.
But this week, we've got a person who we just can't shut up about. We've got a bonus conversation for you all. We're talking with author, editor, podcaster, and publisher Nate Ragolia. Did I say that right?
You did. That was perfect. And spoiler, I also can't shut up. So good luck editing this.
But before we get into it, if you want to support the show, you can rate, review, and subscribe on any and all podcast platforms. If you're in the book buying mood at the moment, you can go down to any book links in our show notes, and those will take you to our affiliate page on bookshop.org. where if you purchase books from our page, we get a very small kickback. And then if you want to join the club, you can go to buymeacoffee.com/bookclubwithjv, where we've got all of our archived episodes, so everything before episode 51, as well as a bunch of fun bonus content where we review film adaptations, all this kind of good stuff. And we'd love to see you there.
So introducing Nate. Nate Ragolia is a lifelong lover of science fiction and its power to imagine worlds more hopeful and inclusive than the real one. His first book, There You Feel Free, was published by 1888's Black Hill Press in 2015. Spaceboy Books reissued it in 2021. He is also the author of The Retroactivist, and his most recent book, One Person Can't Make a Difference, which came out last year, was featured on Tor.com's Can't Miss Indie Press speculative fiction list, and was translated into Italian for Ringworld Sci-Fi in 2023. He founded and edited Boned, a literary magazine, and is also the creator of 2 webcomics. Nate is also a husband and a dog dad. Welcome, Nate.
Hey, thank you. I realize that my bio doesn't include that I am also a publisher at Spaceboy Books, so that part's in there also. Yeah, thank you. Thank you for having me. This is an honor and a pleasure.
We have so many things to talk to you about. You've done so many things.
Some would say too many. Myself included. I'm one of the some. Yeah.
You would say too many?
Some days it feels that way, yeah.
Yeah.
That is often my background thoughts anytime I learn something new about you, Nate. Is like, where did you have time for that? Like, I also know you didn't mention in your bio you have like 2 podcasts.
Yeah.
Well, it was 3. Now it's 2. That's good for you and streamlining your
I mean, now it's fortunately only 1. But yeah, it was, I had a Dungeons and Dragons podcast for a little while, which, it turns out there's only like 25,000 of those. So my odds of catching any audience was really high. And then, I used to run a game show podcast that we transitioned into the podcast Debut Buddies that Victoria actually was a guest on recently. And that episode is out now at time of recording of this, talking about the first skyscraper.
I'm so excited.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sure she had an absolute blast. I can't wait to listen.
It was real good. We found out about horses. We found out about sinking Chicago stuff. About all the buildings in Chicago that are like slowly falling into the earth.
Yeah. Who needs sci-fi when you're also living in just a sinking world?
That is sort of the benefit of living in a capitalist dystopia is it's like, oh, this is already science fiction enough.
Yeah. Try living in the lowlands of Europe. The whole thing is just swamp.
Well, yeah, because people were like, hey, we want our land back, ocean, so we're going to take it. And we're going to put various flowers and things there. And then, oh, whoops, this doesn't work forever.
Yeah.
And then you're just houses falling into the sea.
Yeah. Speaking of everything you do, I feel like my idea of you is that you just like never sleep or something. Like, how, I guess, is my first question. How do you do it? And it seems like you're just so continually inspired and following like what's interesting to you and making stuff that's really cool. And most of the time it works. I'm sure sometimes it doesn't. Most of the time it works. How do you keep that up? And do you sleep?
I do sleep.
Okay.
I tend to sleep from around 11 p.m. to 7 a.m. That's my sleep schedule. Yeah, I'm very lucky. That's the thing. Like, I'm very lucky to be sort of predisposed to doing the amount of stuff I do. I get extremely stressed out from time to time with the amount of things that I have to do. So, full transparency, like, I'm not just, like, singing a song and whistling and doing all this stuff.
Yeah.
But, I don't know. I think, like, it's just stuff that sustains me sort of emotionally and psychologically. Like, creating things makes me feel better than not. And so I have always, throughout all of my previous jobs, used these as like ballast against, oh, hey, I just like answer emails all day or answer the phone or whatever, or I'm doing these menial tasks that don't engage me, or I'm working on presentation decks all day and now what I want to do is do a creative thing. So I'm going to design a book cover for this person who we're publishing. I don't know. It's just fun. Most of the time I don't think of it as work stuff. It's just things that I enjoy. And I also, I might just kind of have a problem. Like, my brain might be wired in such a way that look, the webcomics that that got mentioned in my bio, like, I wrote one of them until I had done 1,000 strips. So I was doing them Monday, Wednesday, and Friday every week until I hit 1,000. So I think that was it was like 6 or 7 years that I did that for really no one but myself. I guess I am tenacious to a fault. Generally, though, like I said, it's fun. We started Spaceboy because my publishing partner, Sean, and I both thought, hey, it's really hard to get weird books published because lots of like small presses don't want to take a lot of chances on stuff because they have sustainability issues. Like, everybody knows that. It's hard. It's a hard field. And the big publishers don't really want to do that because really weird books don't have broad appeal.
They want to keep the lights on.
Well, yeah. And we were like, hey, we don't really, like, let's just do this for fun and give people an opening. Because you see how hard it is. I mean, when I got my first book published, it was well after I would have thought, right? I walked out of college thinking like, oh man, I graduated with creative writing honors and all this other stuff. And like, surely I'll just send stuff to the New Yorker and they'll publish it, right? And for a while I kept like a drawer full of rejection notes and things. And then I one day said like, this isn't really serving me at all. It's like just sort of here and I don't need it. But you finally do break through. And I just felt like, hey, I want people who want to write weird stuff like this to have a shot. So let's just make more space, right? Because getting accepted is possibly the best feeling that you can have. It is literally acceptance on all definition levels of that word. Because you feel seen. You feel like, oh, somebody gets my work. I mean, my favorite part of Spaceboy is emailing people and saying, hey, we read your manuscript and we really like it. We'd like to publish it. Are you still interested? And knowing that someone went, oh, wow, my big swing of a story found someone who isn't going like, yeah, I mean, I get what you're doing, but this isn't us.
Yeah, that's a really cool experience of being able to give that to someone, that level of acceptance. Yeah, that hits home as far as like when someone just says like, oh, I actually listened to your podcast and I really liked it. And I'm like, I didn't know you knew I had a podcast. Like, that's incredible. I'm also very much a gold star student. And like, if someone gives me a gold star, I'm like, yeah, that's what I needed today.
I think one of the most difficult challenges of adulthood for anyone who was a gold star student or just like if you went through schooling and had a pretty good time of it, like you actually enjoyed school, is that you exit education and no one tells you that you're doing well until you're not doing well in any other circumstance, right? Like, there is no professional, like, good job, you succeeded on this assignment and you get this thing that tells you how you're doing generally. You wait until you get a review at some point and someone says, like, here's the things you're doing well, here's the things you're doing wrong, whatever, or you're just fired, or or you get a speeding ticket or whatever, right? Like, negative reinforcement comes at you way more often than positive does once you leave school. At least for kids who had a lot of positive reinforcement in school, which I recognize is not everybody's experience. But yeah, I think I can do all of it. I just do all of it because it does, like, there are so many things that feel good. It's like selfish selfish altruism that I feel really good when I design someone's book cover and they like it. I feel really good when someone is excited to be published. And it's fun to write. I enjoy writing when I have the time. I haven't in a while, but I do love doing it.
What's standing out to me right now, listening to you, is that being creative to you still feels good, and that you are able to then act on it. Because something I think I've seen so many burnt out creative people experience is that, like, doing the thing is no longer fun, or they no longer have the energy to follow what makes them happy because they're so burdened with adult life, or they've gotten so much negative feedback, like you were talking about, all the negative reinforcement or whatever it is. And so, like, you have to kind of remind yourself, I like to do this. This is fun. You have to, like, remind yourself of that. And it takes a lot of effort to, like, get yourself in the chair. It's such a small thing, but listening to you be like, yeah, it's really fun, and so I do it. I'm like, my brain is not computing that.
In fairness, like, I will say two things. I think really talented at compartmentalizing things. So, like, I am able to enjoy doing the thing knowing that I might get negative feedback. And it's so grossly, like, influencer babble to be like, just do it for yourself. Because I know it's not as simple as that. And, you know, and it's not as simple as that for me. Like, I would be lying if I said, like, oh, no. I mean, I definitely go through, like, periods of time where I cannot do anything. Like, I have not written a sentence really probably since mid-2021 was the last time I, like, wrote something for myself. I haven't had the time or the energy. I haven't felt inspired to do it. Like, I've tried. I've done the sit down and, like, okay, let's map this book out, and I don't have it with me, right? That happens. I sort of choose to believe that I will write another novel because I figure I probably will. Like, I seem to be on, like, a 5-year cycle, so we're coming up on it. I'll start something in a couple of years, as long as the world is still here, which becomes less and less certain by the day, but, you know, whatever.
Yeah.
I mean, I said before, like, I really feel lucky. I feel very fortunate that someone will email me and be like, hey, cool, let's do the cover design on this, and I will do something, and then I will send them a design, and they'll be like, I don't like that, can we do this instead? And I'll be like, okay, I really like what I did, but it's your thing, so we're going to do it. We're going to change it. And then I think that if I didn't do this, I would be far more sad and depressed. So it might just be self-medication is the only reason why I'm creating stuff. I'm willing to accept that as the possibility.
When I was in college, we read the short story Raymond Carver's What We Talk About When We Talk About Love. And there's a character in there, and this minute, I don't even remember what the story's about, but I remember this minute detail of she's a writer and she writes about one poem a year that she actually likes. Like, she's not like a full-time writer. That's not her job. And I remember reading it as a college student and thinking, that's so sad. Like, you only have one poem a year in you. Like, what are you doing? Like, why don't you write more? And now I'm like, I'm at that point in life where I'm like, I've got about one good poem a year. Like, that's it.
Yeah.
And it makes me excited to find that poem each year and to, like, lessen the pressure of, like, I need to have a whole body of work coming out all the time. And it's like, well, that's never been my focus or my ability. So I'll be happy with my one poem a year. And then it's become a joke a bit with my partner where I've been going through a bit of a sad spell lately, and he's like, oh, you about to write your poem? Like, it's happening. And I'm like, everything I've written is way too sad. Like, I don't even want to reread it to edit it. So it's definitely in the therapeutic journal, not the journal of things that I might shape up into an actual piece. It's interesting to think about how my conception of what it meant to be a creative person has changed since my college years, when I was putting, 100% of my day towards my studies, which were in creative fields, thinking that that was going to be how the rest of my life looked.
You know, the other thing that really matters that we obviously can't do very much because of the nature of the economic system and the world we live in is, like, making time every day to go out to just gather inspiration, not to be inspired, not to create. You know, my favorite thing still to do is just walk around a populated area and just kind of listen to people talking to each other, because you will pick up just a tidbit here and there, eavesdropping, that will inspire you to go, oh, that's a relationship I have never had and would never have, and therefore I could never write that. But now I've heard it happen. I've witnessed this concept manifest in reality, and I can wrap my head around it. And then even if you don't do anything with it immediately, it sticks in your brain, right? It's you get these earworm ideas and they hang out and go, oh yeah, wait, that couple was fighting about this thing that makes absolutely no sense to fight about, but how interesting is that as a background piece to something? And yeah, I mean, it's a pity, because I think part of the joy of like the university experience, the beauty of it is that you would read something interesting and you would talk to interesting people and you would reflect this knowledge off of each other. And then you would have your own thoughts and you would reflect on your own thoughts. And all of this was part of growing as a human being. And then you come out of that, and you often frequently find that, like, no, you're really not supposed to reflect on anything. What we need you to do is use the script we provided.
Yeah.
Make sure that the thing gets delivered the way it's supposed to, and then do that again until the clock says what the clock says. And so I don't know how you functionally toggle from automaton to human easily after you've had to do that for a long time, right? Like, I think, as with anything sort of mechanical, like, that switch gets kind of rusty or breaks. Yeah. And so eventually, like, look, I'm 41 going on 42. You know, there are days when literally all I can do after work is go, okay, I'm playing video games for the next 2.5 hours before bed, because it will allow me to completely check out of anything else I'm thinking about. And I am going to hope, upon hope, that tomorrow I feel excited to go and write this email to this author about XYZ, right? Yeah, it's a weird state of affairs. Like, it's hard being a creative in a world that is becoming more actively predatory against creatives, right? Like, with AI and everything else.
To have this conversation in the middle of the strikes, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, you have this circumstance where it's like, no, we don't really care about how you make stuff or that you make stuff. We just want stuff. Because all people want is stuff. And if we give them 1 million stuff and they only like 2 stuff, they still paid us $10 a month, so we don't care.
Yeah, I just saw this morning people digging up job postings from all the streaming sites. They're all hiring, like, AI specialists.
Oh, yeah.
That's what they're all doing right now. Well, you're talking about the university system, too. Like, I just finished a master's degree. I've been back in the university system for the last 2 years after 4 years of being out of it. And that is one of the biggest differences, like what you were saying, of not even looking for inspiration, but just having the space in your brain and, like, in your emotions and your energy and your time in particular. Because what your bosses own is your time, which is stupid. Having the time and space and energy to just exist in spaces where you are open to receiving inspiration. Not necessarily you're looking for it, but, like, just being able to sit in the park with your friends or something. There's no agenda, and you're just you're eating your gelato and you're just, like, absorbing what's around you. And maybe you get something from it and maybe you don't, and it's not a big deal. And also, part of the system is that what you're supposed to be doing is reading a lot and exploring what's interesting to you and then talking about it with other people. That's, like, the whole point of you being in the system. And those are my 3 favorite things to do. It feels like such a simple thing that, like, gets starved out of you so quickly in kind of the quote-unquote adult world and kind of the work environment, is like, we don't want you taking in new ideas. We don't want you following what's interesting. We want you following within these guidelines. And we don't want you talking to other people about new ideas, because then you might unionize and turn against us.
Ideas are the scariest thing that exists. Like, you look into any circumstance of sort of control and oppression, ideas are the first thing to go. You know, you describing that reminded me that I went into one of my good friends. He teaches creative writing, and he had me come in a couple of times to talk to his creative writing students, kind of about why you write, what you're doing, and everything. And I went in with a very, like, hey, just recognize that you're here and everybody wants to be Stephen King level popularity. Almost nobody will be. And so you just have to remember that you're doing this for you. Say what anybody will about David Foster Wallace being kind of gross in some ways. He gave a commencement speech, I'm pretty sure, that it still sticks with me, that's about, like, nobody likes going to the grocery store. Like, when you're at the grocery store and you're mad because everybody's in your way, guess what? Everybody else is that way too. The entire world is unhappy to be doing the things they have to do every day. And you are walking around in spaces filled with unhappy people. When you're at the university, it's not that. Like, outside of maybe, like, exam day or something, like, maybe finals week, everybody's a little on edge, but, like, most people aren't on edge because they hate it. They're on edge because there's stakes that feel elevated. Mm-hmm. Whereas adult reality is like, oh, well, we have to go file into Target again, and there's going to be people who are in the way of stuff, and stuff's not going to be there, and you just have to do this because you have to do this. And it's wholly different kinds of energy.
And I think also part of what so many people miss about college is not really the classes. It's that was maybe the first and only time that they experienced something like socialism.
Sure.
Particularly with American college campuses, where everyone's living in a close-knit community within walking distance or biking distance of their friends. Food is easily accessible. The entire infrastructure is sort of built around keeping you in this community that is meant to sort of set you up so that you can spend all your time using your brain and thinking about stuff.
Yeah.
And that's, for many people, the one and only time they get something like that. And that's often what people miss.
Some of the best times were just, you're hanging out and somebody pops in and they're like, hey, what are you up to? And then suddenly you have things happening in your life, right? That's not going to happen if you go to your suburban home and park your car in the garage and go sit down in, like, your cavernous living room and watch your flat screen. Like, if somebody shows up at your door, that's usually a sign that something is wrong or you ordered something. And those are really the only two reasons. And otherwise, like, that's going to get into a whole conversation about American individualism and the isolation inherent to it. But yeah, I completely agree with you.
Yeah, it's been something I've been thinking about a lot. My partner and I are looking at buying a condo, which comes with a lot of thoughts and ideas, but the main one being, like, how do we live close to people in a way that actually, like, works? We live in a major city. We have friends who are within a 20-minute train ride, and we see them maybe once a month. Like, it's like they're so close, but we don't see them often. But the one friend we do see, like, almost every week, is because we intentionally moved to the same street. The conscious effort of, like, I'm going to be close to you because someday, like last week, it's like she and I are both training for a race, and so I'm like, let's go run together. I've got an hour. And she's like, cool. Me too. We both work from home. So it was like, go for a run, come back, see you later. Like, it didn't have to be a big thing. In the same way in college, it was like, you pop in, be like, hey, I'm going to go get food at the place everyone gets food. Do you want to come? Because you also need to eat. And then you're like, great, now you have a friend hang. Or they're like, no, I'll catch you next time. And you know there will be a next time in the next week, not like months, as it is in adulthood often. It makes me, okay, this conversation's also making me think of Julie and I were both in Seattle. She was conducting research, and we were both hanging out at her friend's university waiting for her friend to get out of class or something like that. And I remember feeling so out of place and, like, mildly grossed out with myself because I was sitting there doing my, like, work. And I'm like, I'm in an institution of learning. Like, Julie and I should be having deep discussions about, like, her research and, like, the things we're writing for the podcast. Like, this does not feel like a place to be writing social media campaigns that I absolutely despise and don't want to be doing anyways. Like, it just, I felt so like, why am I doing this? Oh, I don't like it. But I loved being back in that space. And it was interesting that it felt so different than, like, I go to a WeWork often, which is a very similar experience. Everyone's there. They're doing their own work. There's a lot of communal workspace. So you're, like, observing other people. You're listening to other people chatting in the background. I have never once had a conversation with anyone there more than, oh, excuse me, I need to get the milk out of the fridge. It's so boring and mundane and, like, awful. And it's like, this could have been a space like university, but the dynamics are just different.
Part of it, to circle back to talking about, like, living near friends, is, like, spontaneity is incredibly valuable to us. It is one of the things that we all have in droves as children. It is almost a defining characteristic of children. It is what people love about children, right? Like we become more and more planned and regimented. Like, it overcomplicates everything so much. And I think that's, like, that was the best part about college. Was, people pop in. You run into someone in the quad. You are, someone's like, hey, do you want to just go get this? And you're like, well, let's go.
Because there was a structural thing set up. Like, in places with really good, really consistent public transportation, you can be a little more spontaneous.
This is true.
When you know the trains are going to be running and you know that they're running consistently every like 15 minutes. So like it's not a huge deal that you have to make this one and that they're not going to break down and that they like run to every single city you might need to go to. And I guess that's something that's been very eye-opening for me if we bring this back around to creativity, is how much there need to be certain structural things in place. Like, the reason we can't be spontaneous is because we're mentally, internally accommodating for all the chaos, all the messed up structures in the way that our society operates, all the structures that don't work or that don't exist or like are specifically designed to keep us separated from each other, right? So that we're just little automatons or whatever it is. Like, why is it so hard to see your friend who's 20 minutes away in not a huge city, right? Why is it so hard? You should ask yourself that. Why is it so hard to connect with your community in any other location but downtown where all the skyscrapers are? That was a decision. That was a decision to center the way that everything in our society operates around humans as workers. And whereas everything in a university is centering everything around humans as thinkers and as makers of stuff and as learners. And if you set up a society where you fundamentally understand human beings as creative people, it's going to look very different, and creativity is also going to be a lot easier. Like, you can follow those spontaneous ideas. You can just do it. As children, like, we want to be spontaneous. We want to follow our instincts. We want to make stuff. We want to think about stuff. We want to bounce ideas off of each other. And it turns into a chore when it's put into the adult world where you are defined by your job and where you live is based on your job, how you live is based on your job, your social identity, your class, your friends, your time, your energy, your healthcare.
Yeah, whether you're eating.
Yes.
And what? Yeah.
You know, I think Victoria and I have talked about a lot of like trying to make careers that don't make us want to die, so that we can do this and be creative, but not everyone has that luxury.
Yeah, and to go back to the AI thing, the proposition that we could reimagine society is very expensive for the people who have all the money. So what if instead of reimagining society, we replace the creative people with robots so that everybody has to be the robots we want them to be? And that's the tragedy of our current moment, I think, is that being a potentiality. But everything you just said is exactly how I feel, and it is really the foundation of why we started Spaceboy also. Like, that's Spaceboy's ethos, is it's about... I think we both wanted the press to be about optimistic science fiction, you know, and so much has changed between 2016 and now that I am much less like, oh, it has to be optimistic, and much more like, what's really provoking people to think about these issues, right? Like, what narratives provide compelling anti-capitalist arguments around socialism and creativity and rethinking. Like, we as a society, and politically especially because it's convenient and easier to dismiss things this way, get caught up in existing terminology and preconceived notions of definition, as if like any of the things that exist that we operate in all the time aren't utterly and completely contrived and actively upheld by us every single day simply by acknowledging that they are real. So what I want stories about what could the world actually just look like. And you don't have to tell me like, oh, well, there's an ethos and this is how we would get people to vote on it. Like, no. Don't talk about that. I understand that we have to move the ball in those ways, but to align too firmly on like, well, this is what this is and how it has to work, it's like, no. None of these things have to be anything. It is from the nature of gender all the way through the nature of religion and governance, right? Like, the idea that you wake up and go, well, I'm a boy and I have to wear pants and I can't wear a skirt. Well, that's contrived. Like, it's all made up. And it's the same thing with taxes and war and resources. Like, oh, we can't do this. We can't end this kind of business because it exists. It's like, no, we can. Why can't we? But we're not, and this is again like that's the post-university problem, is we are told less and less to question these things. Everybody just goes, no, these are just how things work.
Talking about your press, though, your website says no steampunk, and
I've had this question, and thank you, Julia. Yes,
Yeah.
I want to know.
What's the story behind that? It feels pointed.
It is, yeah, it's kind of an inside joke, and it's kind of a thing at the same time. I think it's mostly that there is something of a, like, tonal artificiality to much of steampunk. I don't have a particular problem with the aesthetic or the idea of, like, what if mechanized rather than electronic? Like, that's cool. I'm okay with that. It also was just kind of a bigger, more twee deal when we started the press, so that sort of made it on there. You know, I mean, what, Jules Verne is steampunk? And I don't mind that. I don't mind Jules Verne.
Was there a particular story or anything that...
Were you getting a lot of steampunk submissions and you're like, oh my God, no more?
Oh no, I mean, I think it was sort of a proactive, like, let's just not, we just don't want to get flooded with steampunk stuff. And to be honest, like, we pretty much only get more conceptual sci-fi anyway. It's kind of nice. We've been really lucky with submissions too. Like, we don't get a lot of like, what? I mean, I've had a few things where I've had to kind of go like, what, why would this happen? But generally speaking, we've been really lucky. And yeah, I think, like, look, if someone sent us a steampunk piece and it was really taking the genre to task a little bit and making it less about, like, oh, this is a Victorian thing, but it's also robots. And instead we're like, okay, here's how I'm going to clash this into something else. I think maybe that's the crux of it, right? Steampunk, because it is simultaneously, like, futuristic and also retro, it sort of is able to walk this line where it doesn't have to say anything about anything, or it like only has to comment on historical stuff that's far gone. As much as I think the economics or social mores of Victorian England is interesting, like, we don't have a lot to gain from it the way that we might from, like, let's look at really what's happening in the moment and project forward. Though, I mean, hey, look, speculative fiction in general is tough because anytime anybody writes something, it's like, oh, this will never happen. And then 3 weeks later, oh, that's happened. Oh, great. This isn't even fiction now.
When we were at AWP, I went to a panel about a collection of speculative fiction writers who had published novels. Most of them had, like, a pandemic element. And it was so fascinating to hear how many of them, most of them had at least started, if not completed, their book before March 2020 and having to go back and edit. One of the authors was like, I had to go rewrite passages of it because the way I described a pandemic was, like, too accurate and might have been, like, distracting for the reader. You know, they would have just immediately been thinking of March 2020 because the book came out in 2021. But yeah, it was really fascinating. And I'm like, oh, I bet that feels kind of nice, but also terrible as a speculative writer to be like, I think people would react this way to a pandemic, and then being like, dang it, we did. And some of the writers saying, like, we acted worse than the characters in my book. My characters are a bit more hopeful and more, like, collectivist and, like, come together about it.
Yeah, there's a movie called Pandemic, right? That a bunch of people were watching, and once the vaccine comes out, everything's resolved in the movie because everyone just wants the vaccine and takes the vaccine and everything's fine. People were like, how was that movie optimistic? It was so depressing. And then real life was worse. How? How was it worse? Ridiculous.
To wrap up a bit of our discussions, I'm curious, thinking back to our ideas of, like, what we crave in, like, a creative experience and being able to exercise creativity, what for you has felt helpful, or what do you think you want to try in your own creative journey, or, like, what's helped kind of create space for that for you? Because as much as we're saying, wow, we miss university structure, we, like, want, like, space for a lot of this creativity, we all are doing it, you know, like, we all are finding space for it somehow. I
think some of it is, I mean, I know I harped on scheduling before, but some of it is, like, cut yourself out a little piece of time. Dedicate it to that, even if it's just thinking about it, right? That helps at least say, like, I am still doing this. You know, routine, it works for me, even though, yeah, sometimes routine gets boring, but sometimes it's also like, I'm so refreshed. I'm so excited to get back to the routine, you know? It's interesting. I think going two different places to do what you normally do also. Anytime like I can get out and just like work at a coffee shop for a little bit or somewhere where there's a different space, it really does, it changes your brain, right? It just changes because you get used to looking at like, oh, that's the wall that's there while I'm working. And when that is not the wall that's there, it's like, oh shit, what else isn't there? You know, I to the extent that we can, I think it's just about like trying new things and honestly, like trying out whatever. If you think you might want to try to do something, like download whatever freeware thing is out there that allows you to use like a drawing tablet on your computer or whatever. Like let your brain get unlocked in different ways, however you can. Because we all kind of get stuck in a cycle of, okay, I have to get this work done. And then I have to do the things that are required to, one, like have a social life, and to feed myself and clothe and bathe and all this other stuff. And then the repeat of that. And so creativity sort of has to be in there. And maybe it's that. Maybe it's like, do laundry differently this time. Like, just throw the whites and the colors together. I don't know. Have fun with it. Like, don't...
Go crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have sort of two things. One that really came out of the pandemic, which is very similar to what you're talking about, which is the thinking of yourself as a sad zoo animal.
Mm-hmm.
Like, something about treating yourself like you're taking care of a wild creature rather than as an adult who has certain things they're supposed to be doing really is a fun kind of perspective shift where you're like, oh, there's not enough enrichment in my enclosure. They need to go somewhere else. This animal needs somewhere else to go because it's getting so sad walking around in circles in this spot.
We need free range time. You gotta do a little free range time. The milk is going sour. We clearly need some real grass, and we need a little bit of time walking around in the field.
Yeah, the cow is unhappy walking around in its own shit. Like, let's let it out in the field for a bit. Let the cow be a cow. I'm not even kidding. Like, think of yourself as whatever animal you want to be, and be like, oh, I think Julia's a little thirsty, or I think Julia's a little cold, or I think Julia has been in this one spot for too long and needs to be taken on a walk somewhere else. Like, genuinely thinking about it that way, really during the pandemic kind of shifted something for me, where it kind of takes you back to your essentials as like a human being. And work is not like, it's frustrating because the work itself is not essential. None of what you're doing is essential, but it is essential to keep you alive, so it's complicated.
I like what you're saying in that, like, we tend to get bogged down mentally in, I have to do this and keep doing it until it's done. And if you step away from yourself and look at yourself as like, man, that lemur is working way too hard.
Yeah.
That lemur needs to go out and just grab a beer on a patio and sit for a few minutes. And then swing around in a tree, and then that lemur could come back and sit at the desk again, and they'll probably have an easier time with everything. I mean, we're certainly not taught to be emotionally self-aware.
No.
We're sort of taught to be unemotional, generally speaking, because unemotionalness is what allows professionalism, air quotes, to occur. Is that no one feels anything about what they're doing. Yeah, it's productivity and being professional while you're doing it. And yeah, so if you kind of go like, okay, well, I'm going to let myself feel these things and also observe myself feeling them and go, you know what? I have a solution for that combination of feeling and doing. And it's really not that hard to do. I love that. That's really smart. And yeah, I'm gonna go with lemur for myself. Yeah.
Yeah. I think I'm some sort of large cat. I think
like a Maine Coon or like an apex predator cat.
Like an apex predator because they sleep a lot.
Great.
They have short bursts of activity and then they're asleep most of the time. That's really my modus operandi. Short bursts of high productivity and then just laying down horizontal.
My friend recently adopted a cat, and he was describing how he picked this cat. And it was basically like the animal shelter made it like a dating app where like you could put your preferences for like, and you would rate, like you want an animal or a cat that's like at least 3 out of 5 social, 4 out of 5 enrichment, or maybe like 2 out of 5 enrichment because I work, in an office.
Right.
I'm not going to be there for enrichment all the time.
That's
And
so
it was
funny.
so funny. And so they just like mapped it out, and it made me think of that. It was like, I am like a 3.5 out of 5 social, and I need to respect that and get enough social energy.
And I'm like a 2 out of 5 social.
I'm like a 5 out of 5 needy.
Yeah. And kind of building off something very related that I think I've been very purposefully exploring since I've been in grad school and have had the space to figure this kind of thing out is exactly what you were saying, Nate, of kind of getting rid of the way that you think you should be doing something. Like, yes, the thing needs to get done, probably, but why do you think you should be doing it that way? And it's been very, very hard, but like practicing following my instincts a little bit more. The way that my brain generates ideas is it spends a lot of time churning in the background and then it kind of word vomits all at once. And so I had to kind of practice being receptive to when that would arrive and not push it. And so it meant spending a lot of time looking like I was doing nothing, just hanging out with friends, sitting in parks. In case you can't tell, in Europe, we spend a lot of time sitting in parks.
It sounds great. It's actually one of the things that I most admire about everywhere but the United States is that people just go sit in parks.
It's great!
You go anywhere around the world and the weather's nice. Like, there are dozens of couples making out in the park and then people sitting and having conversations and playing music, and it's the middle of the day and they're just existing, which is cool as a concept.
And just kind of letting it pass over you, and whatever my brain wanted to be thinking about and wanted to be writing about, rather than shooting it down, I would encourage it. Because, like, okay, if my brain wants to write a whole essay about rainbow capitalism and K-pop, like, that's just where we're going today, and we just need to journal about it for a hot second, and we need to write that essay and get it. Because you want to reward the behavior that you want to see in yourself, right? Again, we're going back to the creature.
Yeah.
If we want the creature to create things, then when the creature wants to create something, even if it's not the thing that it should be creating, we want to reward that. Right? And so I'm like, all right, I guess this is what we're making right now. And then we write it and then talk about it with our friend. And oh, this is really fun. I remember why this is fun, even though it's not what I'm supposed to be making. And when I practice that, rather than what I should be doing, but what seems to be coming up for me, it has made making things that I am supposed to be making a bit easier. Not necessarily on the schedule that I or Victoria would hope. But it gets done in a way that we're all happier.
Yeah.
And so I think practicing getting rid of the shoulds by just rewarding any kind of itch, any creative itch that comes up, no matter what it is, just go with it. And if nothing's coming up, don't force it, but put yourself in places where you can be open or change your environment a little bit or something, like you were saying.
Yeah. If we can embrace agency in our lives to some limited extent, we are infinitely happier, right? Like most depression and frustration and things comes from feeling like there's literally nothing I can do about this.
Yeah.
What about you, V?
The first thing I think of is kind of like you were saying, Julia, like, and Nate as well, as far as like just making space and allowing things to happen regardless of schedule, which is very hard for me because I'm a very schedule-oriented person. But things like moving to completely remote work has been super helpful for that, because I can be like very single-mindedly focused on something that I forget to like eat and like take care of myself. And so being in an office wasn't always helpful because then I would just be so focused all day. And I had great coworkers at my last like in-person job, which was delightful to help kind of break up that single-minded, like shut the world off and forget that anyone else is talking around me. But it didn't help my creative side because then I'd come home just like exhausted all the time. And that's when this podcast was born, was when I was like, I'm putting every ounce of my being into my job that no one cares. I don't even care as much as I'm caring about this job. Like it doesn't,
Right.
It doesn't require that, doesn't need that. And just being able to have something running in the background that was more exciting, and it was for me and for Julia and for what we wanted to make. I mean, I was also like writing show note ideas and reading the books we cover, maybe when I was on the clock, but whatever. No one cares. The job was still getting done. I got promoted, so apparently something was working.
No one else was focused the rest of the time like you were.
And so it was just like, it started from a place of like, I need a break, I need space for this. And moving to like being flexible on where I work has been really helpful. I realized I just have a better memory for everything in my life if I'm not in the same spot working all the time, because then the days don't just blur together, where it's like, when was I working on that? Oh, this 1,000th hour I was sitting at that desk in the corner. Or no, that was the day I went to that new coffee shop where the Wi-Fi sucked, but the coffee was really good. So like we go back when we don't have meetings. It's kind of place. My other thought was, and related, is for me, it's been super crucial to have like a creative partner. Like Julia is that person for me. And so like I had many podcast ideas before this one happened. I made 2 episodes once. And then I was like, I'm never doing that again. I was like, that was so much work. It was, but when I was like, I want to start a podcast again, I know that was fun, I want to do it. It didn't really like take off as an idea until I was like, you know what, Julia, I would like to do this with you because I think we'd have fun, but also I know I will never do it if I don't have someone to like bounce ideas off of and to feel accountable to each other, even when our release schedule is completely out of whack. But we still have that sense of responsibility to each other, but also the complete flexibility of like, Julia had to write a K-pop essay the other day, and edits are going to get done when they get done. And Victoria had like too many plans for a weekend, and so the episode's going to get released on a Tuesday instead of a Friday. Whatever. But letting go of the, I should do this because that's how podcasts are made, or that's how a successful podcast ever gets traction, and more like, I want to do this because Julia's counting on me, and we spent a lot of time making this episode, so I'm going to go like put it out in the world. That's made a big difference for me for creative work.
I mean, the way that we both work is slightly different, but does complement really well, where like, if you give me an idea that my brain likes, that's all I'm going to be thinking about forever. Like, until it gets done, that's just what I'm thinking about. And so sometimes you have no idea, you'll like drop a little thought and my brain just goes, and you move on to something else. And you're like, wait, you've been thinking about that this whole time? And I'm like, yes. When can we make it?
And I think that's a really good point. The reason why like doing creative things, and why universities, and why all of these, like why doing publishing with groups of people, why all of this, like it's fun because you're engaging other people to do a shared collective activity. It's almost as if we're not supposed to operate in independent competition with each other all the time.
What?
Almost. It's almost as if that.
Crazy. You mean humans aren't individual unit automatons who never share feelings or thoughts with anyone else?
I mean, it's a wild idea, but I think, maybe it'll catch on.
So wrapping up, 2 last things. So recommendations. So Nate, I know we didn't like to deep dive into like one specific thing you've written or one thing you've made, but if there's one specific one or a few you'd like to shout out that you recommend people check out, and then maybe if they like X, Y, and Z, maybe they would like your stuff. I
would love if anyone would check out One Person Can't Make a Difference. That's the cyberpunk noir that I put out last year. I wrote it during the pandemic. It was like hey, I can't do anything else, so I'm just going to do this. And so I wrote that book over the course of like 3.5 months, I think.
You were the person who actually wrote their book during the pandemic. Ugh.
Yeah.
All those tweets is like, if you didn't do anything during the pandemic, you're never going to do anything. you were that person. You actually fulfilled it. That's really cool.
The book has nothing to do with the pandemic. There is no plague. There is no anything in there, though it is about political divisiveness and sort of conspiracies of the way that we perceive things. It's kind of a lot about the things we've been talking about for most of the last hour and a half. So I think anybody might enjoy that. The main character is basically a gig worker. He has had to sell his entire body below the neck, and he is all synthetic now because he needed money to live, so he sold his organs off, and now he literally lives charge to charge. Every week his robot body has to be recharged, otherwise he dies, so he has to work to live in the most direct sense possible, and then he gets wrapped up in some political intrigue and things that change his perspective on reality. It's a very optimistic book, all in all. Like, so the title being "One Person Can't Make a Difference," it's a little tongue in cheek. You know, you gotta if you've read Philip K. Dick, if you've read most like sci-fi pulp stuff, they're long titles that have sort of cheeky implications to them, and that's really what's going on there. I would love if folks check that out, and if you read Italian, go to the Ringworld sci-fi website and buy it in Italian, because it's there now. I would love anybody listening to check out our podcast also, not only because Victoria was just on it, but it's fun. It's a podcast about firsts. It's called Debut Buddies, and you can find it anywhere that you listen to podcasts. Other recommendations, I guess, I have been playing the game Cyberpunk 2077, which it released. It wasn't very good because it was buggy and all sorts of things, but they have patched it and fixed it. It is really a fantastic game about living in the not too distant future and how kind of probable that is. And you get to do things your own way. So you don't, in a lot of games, you kind of have to kill people as part of the gameplay. And this game allows you to be the sort of person who's just like, no, I'm just going to hack everybody and make them go to sleep. And then I can complete the task, and I don't have, I don't have to leave any bodies. I'm just like, all right, cool. I did my thing. I'm out. So that's fun. Plus, it's sci-fi, so it's good stuff. And yeah, I don't know. Like, I have a hard time likening anything that I've done to anyone else. But I really admired Margaret Atwood's Blind Assassin is one of my favorite books because it combines like the naturalistic nature of like a gothic novel with some sci-fi. I always love Kurt Vonnegut. I mentioned Philip K. Dick. I don't think that I write necessarily like any of those people, but, I do all kinds of things. So you can find me. I have a website, nateregolia.com.
Okay, and then wrapping up our final segment, Currently Obsessed. So these are the one or two or three of many things that are bringing us joy lately.
Okay, so Good Omens Season 2 is currently taking over my life right now.
Okay, great.
And it ends on a cliffhanger because, well, their production got interrupted by COVID, but it's only half of the concluding story that Neil Gaiman and Terry Pratchett originally came up with. And so it ends right in the middle, and you're just like, ah! And now because of the writer's strike, Neil Gaiman's not working on it, and so he's like, y'all better stream it so that Daddy Bezos gives us our final season. Though he has promised if something happens, he will like write it as a book or something. Like he's not gonna just leave it. And then very similar to what we were talking about today, I was in Copenhagen last weekend and took a tour, like a little audio tour of this alternative community that was formed in the 70s called Freetown Christiania. It's not bound to the state of Denmark in the way that everything else is, and it was formed out of like a housing crisis. They like stuck to their guns, and it's like a fully operating communal living. Like no one pays rent, and there's no police. Everything is decided by consensus. There's all kinds of alternative communities that operate there. There's a really thriving queer community there, like all punks, all the people. I was blown away, and the fact that it was possible at all, I was like, giving me ideas.
That is awesome. I want to go there.
What about you, Nate? What are you currently obsessed with?
So I have started watching a show on Amazon Prime called I'm a Virgo. It is a Boots Riley project. I don't know if anyone saw it.
The Lakeith Stanfield with the horses.
Yeah. That's exactly the one, and I can't think of the name.
Sorry to bother you?
Yes, thank you. Sorry to bother you.
That was a terrifying film.
Yeah, I didn't know what I was getting into when I watched that.
Nobody did.
Fascinating.
I'm a Virgo is about a young man who's born in Oakland who is gigantic. So it is the story of a 13-foot tall 16-year-old boy who kind of grows up in isolation and then is in the world. And it's kind of like a world with real superheroes, or at least like a Batman kind of type. It's Boots, so it's like it's got that weird running through it, and I'm sure I've only watched a couple of episodes, I'm sure something really weird like horses is going to happen in this, and I'm really looking forward to it. So that's a big thing. And then this is just kind of on a personal note. I'm a dog dad. We have 2 corgis, Rocket and Magnolia, and they have just started recently doing this thing where like Rocket just like will lick her face, and she will just keep wanting to have her face licked. And so like this morning I'm drinking coffee, I'm petting Rocket, Magnolia's like up in Rocket's face, Rocket's licking her and like whatever. And it's just this very sweet thing. There's nothing, again, there's nothing better than just seeing things getting along and loving each other and sort of like nuzzling together. So yeah, I'm supporting dogs liking each other.
I love it.
Okay, I will echo Good Omens season 2. I'm enjoying it so far. There's many things that made me laugh really hard that I'm sure if you did not grow up in a church, it doesn't hit in the same way, but I hope the show is still interesting.
It's for the religiously traumatized gays is really the target demographic.
Yeah.
So
middle of the Venn diagram. I have gone on some very long bike rides lately that have been very helpful for escaping the sad and enjoying the bike ride. I also learned a silly thing that my bike seat was too low. I thought it was in an appropriate spot, and then I moved my bike seat up, and I'm like, I'm a new being. I can bike so much further without pain. I also, yesterday, had a great time watching everyone try to go to Lollapalooza from my window. The city of Chicago is taken over by 16-year-olds. Some of them are maybe 20. I don't know. And I don't drive a car. And so it's just really funny watching all these angry drivers who are like, why can't I drive through the city? And it's like, you're never going to make it through this 4-way stop sign because there's just going to be teenagers walking for the next 5 hours. And if I'm going to be inundated by festival goers, I'm just going to have a cheerful attitude about it. I just got to laugh. Well, thank you so much, Nate, for joining us. This was a fun chat. I had a good time.
Yay.
Thank you. This was great. Thank you for having me on.
So excited to see everything, whatever it is that you make next.
Thank you for listening to Book Club with Julia and Victoria. We would love to hear your thoughts on this book or the topic we discussed, so you can share your review and recommendations with us on Instagram at Book Club with JV, on our website, bookclubwithjv.com, or by leaving a review on Apple Podcasts. You can also visit our website for show notes with links to all of the recommendations and the things bringing us joy. If you don't already, go ahead and follow us on whichever podcast platform you are listening on so that you can be notified when our next episode is released. This episode was co-hosted and produced by myself, Victoria Bruick, along with Julia Clausen. Rebecca Gasney provides us with project management support. Our music is composed by Greg Bruick, and our logo was designed by Gabby Febland. Until next time, happy reading.